Southwold, like many of the East Coast resorts, has an excellent beach where Brits can indulge themselves. It's sandy and wide and faces east, and in the UK the prevailing wind is from the west, so it's often sheltered and warm. But when the wind swings around to come off the North Sea, the beach will test the mettle of any wimpy nation on earth. But we Brits quite like being tested. Makes me rather proud to see this sort of thing going on. Then there are the beach huts. How much? Well, the cheap ones go for 50k, and that's not outright ownership, just for a long lease. Every name tells a story. Witty, intelligent, ironic, affectionate, they cover the whole spectrum. Southwold is easily the poshest town of the journey so far. You can tell that by the size and beauty of the boats along the quay and by the price of the houses in town. But in Southwold itself, up on the hill, out of reach of the floods, the houses should be expensive. The whole town is a real treat for the eyes. I couldn't think of a better place to spend a long hot summer or a slow retirement. First of all, and this may sound counterintuitive, it was blessed by a massive fire in 1659. Pretty much the whole town went up in flames. At the time it was comprised of tiny houses, some of them thatched, tightly hugging the high ground. Flames would have jumped from house to house with the steepness of the hill to help them spread. When they rebuilt, they left massive green grass fire breaks between the blocks of houses. It makes the town feel light and airy, like a park with buildings. The cannons here attracted the attention of the Germans, and the place was bombed in the First World War. So during the Second World War they hid the guns, and the Luftwaffe left Southwold in peace. Rabbits roam unmolested through large parts of the town, which sits on a sand cliff and looks down on the North Sea. Eventually though, the sea will erode the cliff away and Southwold will be no more. Not this century or the next perhaps, but certainly by 3000 it will have pretty much gone. And just a few hundred yards up the coast to the north, you can go for a walk and see where the land is falling into the sea. This is the next house it's going to go. Thursley. Goodbye, Thursley. The council was thrown in the towel and is letting it go. The local landowners try to slow this pace by dumping all sorts of unsightly rubbish. Just like Canute though, it's a lost cause. Such is the fate of Southwold. It is inevitable. But right now the town is a wonderful, beautiful, open, vibrant and thoroughly charming place. In the summer. The houses have all been bought by well-moneyed toffs, lawyers, accountants, money men, artists occasionally. Southwold still has a pier. A wonderful pier. Great shops, and you won't often hear me say that. Lovely seaside food, an amazing water-powered clock. Cherry on the cake, the most original slot arcade you'll ever see. Each crazy machine has been dragged up from the fevered imagination of engineer and artist Tim Hunkin. Britain hasn't seen his like since Roland Emmett. Look them both up on the web and you'll see what I mean. British eccentric engineering at its best. And when you think about it, these machines not only have to be crazy and humorous, they have to be well engineered because they're slot machines and get used a lot. Emmett would have been proud of Hunkin, and old Roland would also have loved the now defunct Southwold narrow gauge railway. The town has always been out on a limb. Tucked away behind its salt marshes and heathland, the main railway from Ipswich to Lowestoft took a detour around Southwold and its boggy approaches, and the railway company refused to build a branch line for such an insignificant little town. In the end, private money was used to establish a narrow gauge link with the main line. It took about 35 minutes for the journey to Halesworth, still a lot faster than a horse-drawn vehicle, but as soon as motor coaches and freight lorries came in, the slow old narrow gauge railway couldn't compete, and it died. All that remains is a few feet of rail, a bit of concrete foundation, and one coal shed. And the route of the bridge across the river, which is now just a pedestrian crossing. Fortunately, this is Britain, so the railway still lives on in the hearts of the men of the Preservation Society, and physically in their detailed models of the railway. It had a branch line that ran right down to the harbour, where the tide still slops in and out at an alarming speed. But there's a fleet of racing dinghies and some hard-working ferrymen. Looks like a tough job to me, especially as 200 yards upstream, the old railway bridge is a perfectly good crossing. So it's a completely unnecessary ferry. People use it just for the thrill of going in a big rowing boat powered by a big man who really knows the tides. The footbridge is the reason why so few yachts go up the Blythe, and for me that makes it all the more special. Sadly, my journey was going to be an expensive one, and although I didn't know it at the time, I would soon be bumping into the biggest bill of the trip so far. Southwold has some great boatyards, but they're used to sticking bills on those rich lawyers, not impecunious hacks like me. Bummer. That first evening in Southwold, the sun went down under the railway bridge, beckoning me to drop the mast and start exploring the River Blythe. Google Earth is wonderful in that it can take you anywhere in the world and you can see what places look like before you get there. And terrible for exactly the same reasons. You now always know what lies around the next bend. But on Google Earth, the top of the Blythe is shrouded in cloud. For the first time in the journey, I really had no idea what lay ahead.
So, we're on the River Blythe, the Blythe estuary. There's the bridge, obviously, which is why the mast had to come down, and there's also this cable here, so I'll wait till I've gone past the cable before doing the next bit.
The Blythe was once a significant trading river. At one time, its mouth was down at Dunwich, 5 miles to the south, but around 500 or so years ago, it changed its mind and decided to take a shortcut to the North Sea near Southwold, thereby turning the local economy completely on its head. The navigation used to snake 10 miles inland to Halesworth, where there was a barge dock and wharf. Now, the navigation ends at Blythburgh. You can still see that the Blythe has been heavily modified by man over the years. The first mile or so after the railway bridge is relatively deep with steep sides and with a powerful current. But the river soon starts to loosen up and relax, and eventually throws in some pretty crazy bends. And there are few things that give me more pleasure in life than sailing around an unknown bend in a river and be able to watch it reveal itself as the curve unfolds. Squadron of swans. Once it opens out, you pass one of the biggest gull colonies on the east coast. Thousands of squabbling, squawking, raucous birds fill the air. The colony is a mad, disputatious place, and the noise soon starts to jangle the nerves. Another mile up the river and the main channel cuts under a bank of trees, and the acoustic changes to classic English countryside as the sounds of the woodland birds start to take over. Wow, what a river. She really twists and turns. As you follow the channel, you can see that not so far in the past, the river was alive with human activity. There were several drying wharfs as well as generations of salting sheds along its length. Sheep grazed across the marshes that were guaranteed to provide year-round forage and a useful bite even in drought years. Now, the whole place has been completely left to the birds. There was obviously a walkway here at one stage. I wonder what it was. Oh, well, a lot of posts. You'd have to obey those markers, otherwise you get into real trouble coming along here. The legacy of all this human traffic and activity means that there are loads of semi-submerged obstacles. There in the distance, I'm afraid, the A12. It'll look okay, but it's going to get a little bit longer. This river was getting better and better. Some bits have been buoyed and withered, but it still requires some guesswork and careful probing to avoid going aground. Grounding. Although, as the tide rises, kissing the bottom is all part of the pleasure for an old East Coast boarding school boy. There we go, grounding. Coming off again in a second. I'm going to have to abandon the camera. Okay, now I'm backing the main. Here it goes. The journey is a treat, the pleasure heightened by the fact that you could spend a month up here and never see another boat.
Wow.
Eventually, the perfect peace is compromised by the stupidly busy A12 that crosses the river at Blytheborough.
Yeah, this thing takes us through, I'm touching and touching and touching. This thing takes a real swing round to the southwest. Okay, now the wind's not my friend anymore. A bit longer, but then I'm going to have to start the engine pretty soon.
I tied the slug up under the bridge and went ashore. Across the way there's a great pub, but I turned my back on drink and went up to Blytheborough Church, which has one of the best ceilings in East Anglia, and plenty of wonderful carvings that somehow escaped the religious fervour of 4 centuries ago. The pew ends are marvellous. Witty caricatures of religious figures of the past, monks, priests and bishops. Maybe the fact that they lampooned Catholic authority was one of the reasons that they were allowed to survive the Protestant clean-up. It's worth walking away from the road to explore the enticing marsh footpaths, far enough so that you can hear the wind in the reeds and the sound of the warblers.
And not a bad bench to sit on either.
Little buggers to film though.
Well,
but it doesn't pay to linger, because the tide will get you. I did cut it fine, and sadly, on the way home, one of the underwater obstructions did for the slug's prop shaft.
above the bridge. It's a lovely day. It was a beautiful evening last night. Sadly, I went to ground and there was a kind of clunking noise from the engine when I started it, so I don't know whether I've got something stuck around the engine. Look at this, this is lovely. There we go, we're sailing. But the trouble is that down here in La La Land, I don't really understand what's going on. I can see it, but while I was looking at the bottom of the boat, we just bumped into the bank. Oh, what do I care? Okay, you can see that there, sheared off bolt. So the shaft was turning in the joint there, and I tightened it up, so I don't really know whether it's working. So I'm saving what torque I have on that until I get back. You can see how fast cutlass gland is dripping. It's at a fantastic speed. I'm in Southwold, stuck a bit because the drive shaft has stopped talking to the coupling on the back of the engine. So there we are, that is now held in with a mole grip to stop it from twisting. There's the coupling with the little rubber bushes to take out some of the vibration before it gets to the drive shaft. There's a keyway here which is obviously broken up. You can see there's a keyway through there. But what I can't work out is there was nothing keeping the drive shaft from falling out the back of the boat. There should be a hole through here. You can see there's a hole here, and that comes out the other side, and there should be an equivalent hole in the drive shaft, but there's not. So there was nothing to stop the propeller from falling out the back of the boat. Don't know how long it's been like that. My plan is to get the mechanic called Rowley to come in here and drill 2 holes. So I've got the job down to 2 holes. It'll be interesting to see how much it costs to have 2 holes drilled. Drill out the broken stud and then drill a hole through the shaft. Shouldn't be too hard, should it? So Rowley's going to put that bolt through the shaft, through this hole. He's drilled out that hole to fit the bolt, and the bolt's going to go through there and out the other side.
See, look at that, that's ridiculous, that is, yeah.
What is it?
Well, the fit on there, that.
Oh, you mean it shouldn't be that sloppy? No, I see what you mean.
That's...
Why is that then?
That's worn, isn't it?
Oh, well...
Everything's worn drastically.
There's a huge amount of movement on there.
Yeah.
But your bolt will tighten it all up in the keyway, won't it?
No,
it won't.
That's the trouble. You might get away with it, but what the problem is that because it's so slack, every time it goes round a revolution, it's working backwards and forwards. So that's why it's worn the Allen key out. See, that coupling should be drive on fit.
Oh, you had to push it on. You mean it's just too sloppy?
Yeah, but even on the good bit of shaft, it's loose, and that shaft has been turned down at the end. Like it's really worn really badly.
Will it last another 2 years?
Well, that's a question.
Well, after you've done it, it'll be better than it was before, though, won't it?
Oh yeah.
Well, there you go. That's good enough for me, man.
That's good enough for you.
Yeah, it's good enough for me.
Right, that's fair enough then. Where's your
where's the what?
mull grips, please?
Boats are a nightmare to work on, aren't they?
Some of them are, yeah. Most of them are, yeah. Yeah, very much
Goodness gracious me.
Very much so.
Well, Rowley says that the boat's got to come out of the water, and we've got to get at the shaft both ways. So it's got to come out of the water, got to pull the shaft, and then attach the shaft to the coupling, and then put it back in the boat. Bummer.
I have no regrets about exploring the Blythe, even though it was an expensive trip. It's one of the unsung beauties of the East Coast. I should have been more careful, that's all.